we were very pro the idea of like having other people come in. So it's like other people coming in for a week is amazing because it just creates dynamism. And
Yeah.
communities need dynamism, otherwise they become cults. And I think and
Yeah.
I think that's like it's like everyone kind of like laughs when I say that, and I'm like, it's such a critical piece because it is so easy to turn a sort of like thriving ecosystem into a cult, and then it
Yeah.
becomes like this, that's the end of it all. So I think like a positive cult is a thriving ecosystem,
Mhm.
and that takes dynamism and bringing in people, having people be able to like come and go as they want.
Today on the Amagi podcast, I'm joined by Janine Leger, co-founder of Edge City, ecosystem builder, and lifelong community architect. Janine grew up in post-apartheid South Africa in a family led by activism and ideals. She cut her teeth building community in Austin and has worked with the likes of Gitcoin and the Ethereum Foundation, bringing capital and resources to problems worth solving. And dare I say, a little fun too. After helping Vitalik Buterin launch Zuzalu, she and her Edge City co-founder Timour have gone on to perfect their pop-up co-living format around the world. They bring together builders and researchers to create a uniquely supportive environment for exploring that intellectual frontier and prototyping new ways of living. The secret sauce includes health-forward defaults, multi-generational living, an environment where people can unmask, and a culture that really sets aside ego to embrace complexity and experimentation. This conversation lands just ahead of Edge City Patagonia, so there's still time to join their month-long pop-up running mid-October to mid-November. Ofer will be there, joining hundreds of builders, families, and visionaries gathering in San Martin de los Andes, Argentina, to test these ideas in practice. Edge City has been such a core part of Amagi's inception, so it was really fun to close the loop a little bit since I did not get the chance to speak to Janine while she was here in my hometown running Edge City Lana. But her life definitely feels like there's a lot of parallels to my own journey of community building. So this was really fun to get a deep dive and behind the scenes. It's amazing to see what Edge City is doing in the world, and also just really lovely to connect with this thoughtful human.
How are you doing, Lily?
Doing very well. Just an early start for me, so just finished my first coffee. But are you winding down your day? What have you been doing?
Yeah, I'm winding down my day here in California. It's crazy how vast the time difference is
Yeah.
between California and Thailand.
Yeah, I'm curious because for me, this is the morning. And as a mom of small humans, I'm like very involved in the mornings and evenings, which can always make these time zone switches a little bit challenging. But in a lot of ways, it feels like my old community days. There's something really beautiful about being at the center of the community and being so like needed. But it's something that like you really need to be able to like handle. So I'm curious about like your role in the center of Edge City and Zuzalu and like so many different projects that you are keeping going. Like, do you feel like it's something that you are balancing right now? I'm just curious about how that's going for you.
I mean, it's definitely a lot. But I kind of feel like when like a friend of mine, said jokingly to one of our other friends who was an investment banker who was working late on a Saturday night once, he was like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And and in that scenario, it was a big joke, but like I actually think it's super true that
Yeah.
when you are doing something that you absolutely love, it feels more like a life's mission than it
Hmm.
necessarily feels like, oh my gosh, how am I juggling everything? And
Yeah.
I think so much of it has stemmed from me over the years, like looking around and being like, life is so beautiful and it's such
Yeah.
an amazing like opportunity to exist in the world.
Hmm.
And like taking that for granted is kind of one of those things that I'm like, wait, why would we ever take this for granted?
Hmm.
And squeezing the most out of it in terms of like how to live better, how to build better. And that doesn't always mean that it's like every day at Edge is, easy. It actually means it's really hard. And I feel like there's this constant balance between like how much work am I doing versus how much of other time and time spent doing other things am I doing? But there's this constant reminder of like living our values. Health forward is such a big
Yeah.
piece of it. So it's like making sure I'm working out every day. Like I'm a big outdoorsman or outdoors woman. I spend a lot of time on the trails. At the moment, I am pregnant, so I'm not doing as many trails as I
Yeah.
normally But I'm normally biking or running at least once a day. Now it's kind of walking or Pilates once a day, but like getting out,
Mhm.
spending time in the sun, eating healthy, like having a great relationship, having great friendships, like checking in on family, like all of those things are such a big piece of it because
Yeah.
that is, health is one piece, multi-generational is the other. Like build and co-creation. Like I feel so stoked that every day I get to work with an amazing team and kind of push this idea of like building a better future and a place to
Yeah.
live that's like beautiful and inspiring and like makes people feel good. Um, like forward. Like that's just such a cool thing to work on that it
Yeah.
almost feels like I'm so lucky to be at the center of a lot of these things, and also that, like, I'm not at the center of them at all.
Yeah.
Like, if I think about Zuzalu, I think, Vitalik is someone who's so inspiring, and how that project was really shaped was this, like, sense of, like, it's grassroots from the beginning, and it needs to be decentralized and grow and be picked up by many different people. So there's incredible leaders, like, pushing that forward without kind of anyone saying, like, "Go and do this." Like, I
Yeah.
remember I was at an event recently, and there was this, like, booth for, like, Zuzalu, and it was like, "Who's doing that?" And I was like, "These 2 amazing people that had had an incredible experience at Zuzalu, that, like, wanna continue the ethos and carrying that forward." So that feels like a very, like it was something that was built to inspire
Yeah.
and not to, like, be at the center of, and there's so many people stewarding it forward. And with Edge, like, we're
Yeah.
taking a slightly different approach where it's like there is more of a central team stewarding it forward, but, like, man, I can't take credit for any of the cool stuff that's come out of it. Like, I look around and I'm like, "Wow, I get to spend time with these amazing people, all of them, like, building something completely different in the world."
Mhm.
Um, and it feels very much like this, like, big tapestry that's being created that,
Yeah.
there was, like, one thread that, we might have weaved at the beginning, but that's been, like, carried forward by so many different people. And it truly does take the entire community to sort
Yeah.
of build that and just this, like, constant thing of, like, "Okay, I'll try and put a thread in here, and I'll try and put a thread in there," just to, like, participate in the tapestry. But a lot of
Social
it feels like
fabric.
picking
Yeah.
up. Exactly.
Yeah. It feels like we're at kind of this very interesting reset point where the more I find guests for the Amagi podcast and sort of just try to learn about these things, it's like, oh, we're all hitting upon such similar themes, like um, how to design like healthy defaults, making sure you're getting sunshine and like touching grass and getting your steps in, just like really basic old school things. Um, but it's just really cool that it doesn't feel like I feel like the crew you roll with, it's not reactionary. It is like very visionary, inspiring. Like there's like a reaction element, but it's not like fear-based, you know? There's a lot of people I think that are really responding much more to the collapse narrative, but it feels like your team is more just like we're future proofing. There are real problems, but we're taking them in stride. And so yeah, I'm curious about like maybe starting with that point, you spoke about your lifestyle and just like being very health forward, like for you personally and for how you curate the experience for Edge, like what are some of those anchors when it comes to health? Because I think that can be interpreted so subjectively.
Totally. I think health is one of these things where, like, it's not just different in different communities, it's, like, also very different by country, and I think that's something really special about Edge being global and us doing things around the world, is that we actually get to learn a lot from different communities, and, like, certain aspects of health are a lot easier in certain places than others. Like, there's such easy defaults that we have completely neglected as a society, especially in the US, around health, around food. It's like seed oils are in everything, and that's becoming sort of more global because it's just cheaper to use seed
Hmm.
oil to sort of to cook with and to put into processed foods. And that's proving to be like incredibly catastrophic to metabolic health. On top of it, like the amount of time that people are spending outside is diminishing. So
Yeah.
no one's getting the vitamin D that they need or sort of the energy from sunlight. And instead, it's like we're getting a ton of blue light toxicity throughout the day. And that's not providing any cellular generation to our bodies.
Yeah.
So again, it's not helping that like metabolic function. Um, on top of it, like so many people are sedentary and are driving around to get anywhere, and the commute is insane. Like most people, it's like, oh, 20 minutes, like no problem to commute somewhere. And I'm like,
Yeah.
20 minutes by car is a long
Yeah.
time. Like, why did we build that as a default? Right?
Yeah.
Like, why have we not built around community? Why have we not built around, being in close proximity to all the things that you
Mm-hmm.
need? Like, my day is infinitely better in an edge environment where we've been thoughtful about that. And my commute is at most 5 minutes by bike.
Yeah.
It just like changes the entire existence of how I spend my day to day. And it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
love living in edge because of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important default that we have is like very close proximity and not settling for anything different. And I think this is a reason a lot of people
Mm.
ask us, why don't we do things in cities more? And there's a part of me that would love to do a lot more in cities, but people committing to being in the, like, same proximity if you
Yeah.
do it in a city is so limited. So you end up having to have, like, one building that
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
spend time at in a day, but everyone then is like, "Oh, well, I can live wherever I find something convenient." And that might be 30 minutes away, and it completely changes the serendipitous, like, nature of
Totally.
encounters on the ground and how people are spending their time outside of the time in this one like, work box that you have. So I think that's, like, a very important default is, like, everyone being in close proximity, um, to the point of sort of light. It's, like, making sure that we're actually using circadian light bulbs. Um, and a lot of people are very confused by this sometimes and,
Yeah.
like, my obsession with this. But it's like blue light at night is just really toxic for us, and it
Yeah.
changes our sleep patterns. Um, the other that we would love to do more of and, like, haven't done as much of to date, but it's really, like, testing sort of microplastics and
Mhm.
toxins in both water and food that we're sort of, like, having people exposed to. Like, my dream is that it's like we have much, much cleaner spring water. There's a whole bunch of folks that are it's still in Wu land, but I think there's, like, science that is starting
Yeah.
to come together around sort of, like, water structure and sort of alive water versus dead water and what we need.
Sure.
Um, and then kind of the same on the food front. It's like while we're not doing that many meals that we sort of, like, give to folks,
Mhm.
those that we do, it's like no seed oils, all organic, like, really trying to focus on much more sort of like paleo based meals. That
Yeah.
said, there's a lot of people in the edge community that are big repeat fans,
Oh,
which
yeah.
essentially your diet becomes completely different.
Yeah.
But it's
Totally.
in a really like strict repeat world, it would be sort of like oranges and
Carrots
and
and
carrots
honey
is
and
like
like yeah.
what you're working with. So there was a couple of interesting folks at the last edge. Anabology is great to follow for this on
Mhm.
Twitter, talking about sort of the honey diet. They're eating a pound of honey a day in the morning and a pound of ground beef in the evening.
Wow.
So like there's a range of people trying new health things at Edge. But what I love is that sort of like the food side of that is like celebrated. The food side of like
Mm.
we
Yeah.
don't really have the perfect solutions yet, but like we need to test out all of these different angles and like ultimately eat as local as possible, organic, seed oil free. And like there's so many jokes that go around about that, but it's fun to see like a culture emerge around
Mhm.
it. And then I think the last piece is like really focused on like activity.
Mm.
It's it's wild to me how many people wake up in the morning and don't work out. Like that
Yeah.
that's a crazy concept to me. As someone who played like 6 sports growing up and kind of then worked out consistently, it was kind of a thing of like, "Oh, wait, there's people out there that like go
Yeah.
to work out every day. Like we need to do something about this." So always have sort of like yoga folks, like amazing yoga instructors that are teaching. We've got a ton of people that are doing sort of like workouts at the gym. There's always a run club. There's like this consistency of working out in the morning. And then the thing that I really love and have seen just like grow in popularity is like the sauna cold plunge.
Oh, yes.
And seeing how sort of like evening activities have completely shifted at Edge to like the late night hotspot is the sauna and
Yeah.
everyone kind of like hanging out there. And I think that's something really special. And, my take is like, if we could replace every bar um,
Yeah.
as a nightlife venue for sauna cold punch spaces, like there's so much room to grow that industry.
Totally.
And, like, I think it's definitely happening in a lot of ways, but it's crazy to me that, like, nightlife for so long has been, like, crowding around a bar, waiting in line to buy a drink, to then try and talk to people in this, like, very
Yeah.
loud environment.
Yeah. With
Um,
like artificial lights, so much stimuli. You can't hear anyone. Like,
yeah, and you're
women
like,
are
"What?"
wearing very comfortable shoes.
Totally, you're like, "What is going on?" So I definitely think there's a lot there's a lot there that it's been fun to see people just, like, come up with different ways of hanging out, in the evenings.
Yeah.
And instead of being part of the, like, healthy nature of how people are spending time.
Yeah.
And then I think the last piece is we've just got a lot of people that care about health on many different levels at Edge. We've got some that are, like, in the US pushing forward regulation change, and really trying to make sure that, like, we're actually changing, like, what is in school lunches and changing, like, what is okay
Mhm.
from, like, a toxicity level in food in the US. It's very different to what's okay in the UK.
Mhm.
And we've got people in the community that are, like, building incredible, like, healthy food brands that are saying, like, big food is just, like, not great in the US, and they
Yeah.
change it, and others that are, like, trying to come up with a counterculture against sort of, like, big pharma. And that's, like, just cool to be around. Like, it's this reminder of,
Yeah.
like, there is a different way that we can, like, build the infrastructure and the built environment around us to be healthier. And that's kind of just, like, on the day-to-day standpoint, and then there's incredible scientists that are, like, working on crazy, like, biohacking stuff,
Yeah.
and, down in Patagonia, there'll be a biohacking residency where people are doing crazy things and kind of, testing new ideas and sort of doing, like, citizen science in a way that hasn't been done kind of in, traditional big pharma environments. So I'm super excited to see that
Yeah.
evolve at Edge. And just like this questioning of like, we don't have all the answers that we need from a health standpoint. We don't
Mhm.
have all the behavioral health information that we want. Like, let's try and get the data from a large sample set.
Mhm.
And having people around that are doing that is like truly inspiring.
Yeah. I want to tug on that thread because, I'm curious about where you get your sense of discernment and confidence when it comes to these principles. Obviously, so I think you and I probably hang out in like the same part of Twitter where we're going to encounter like Ray Pete and Barbara O'Neill and Brian Johnson and just that whole community of like alternative health. But that's certainly not mainstream. And we almost live in an age where there's so much information that you could basically just pick and choose and try to like cite your way to authority and truth. But obviously there are things that work, there are things that don't work. Institutional capture is a thing, and you need to have a sense of like you need to be able to work through some of that, right? So for you, obviously this is all being reinforced by like a really wonderful, supportive community of smart folks that you trust. But what was your perhaps through educating yourself to this?
I mean, I think like health is one pocket among many at Edge that I care about and like have seen grow and like have had to kind of had like my own discernment to get to.
Yeah.
I'd say like education's another. Like it was like
Yeah.
I did not love my primary school education, nor my high school education. Like I was like, why do I have to sit in a classroom? I really dislike this.
Yeah.
Um, and there's been a lot of relearning there of like, wait,
Yeah.
like the education system doesn't quite work for everyone in the way that it is. And like
Yeah.
it needs to be sort of new learning. So
I
like
guess
there's
that's
so
like
many.
that's the thread I kind of want to pause on too. It's like we're relearning as adults how we're supposed to learn through the world because we did so much information processing. Those of us who like went to public school, which is still, I think, a lot of people, that you download information from an authority and you're supposed to like if the science has been done, then you can trust it, right? You can like pause your thinking in some ways. But in a world with a lot of information, we're kind of relearning, right? Like what is actually needed to sort of poke at the truth. So I definitely hear you on the education side, that it's like we're retraining ourselves, right?
And I think there's a piece there where it's like I don't think everything has to be dismantled. It's kind of like how Edge is really focused on micro exits. Like, I don't
Hmm.
think we're in this world of like, we need to exit and start afresh because everything we've learned is wrong. We're
Yeah.
sort of in this world of like, there's aspects that have been taught well, there's systems that work well. There's some things that make a lot of sense. Like, everything makes sense in how we got to where we got to.
Yeah.
But like, there almost needs to be, like, enough space to sort of question or, like, jostle thinking.
Hmm.
Both, like, jostle sort of, like, our minds to be like, "Wait, does that actually make like, why are we doing it that way?" And I think the best way to describe that is, like, COVID did that to so many people, where it was sort of this moment in time where, like, no one really knew what the heck to do.
Yeah.
Like, we were like, "What do we do?" And there was, like, authorities saying one thing that was really not working for anyone. And people sort of like following in certain ways and then being like, wait, I'm not healthier by following this regime. Like I need to kind of question and do things differently. And then rethought just like a ton of things over that year. And I think a lot changed as a result of that. And there's like these moments in time I think that have happened in the past where it has been like stop and pause and question systems
Yeah.
and almost like what we're trying to do with Edge is like create more micro moments for that
Uh-huh.
of like stop and pause and just like question like, is the way that you're building your company the right way to do things? Is your company even the right thing to be building? Is
Hmm.
the way that you're spending your day to day the right way to be doing things? So kind of coming full circle back to your question around like, where did this discernment come from? I think interestingly enough, I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. Um, I grew up in sort of a time where, like, I was born right after the apartheid. My parents were super anti-apartheid and like big activists. My mom worked in sort of a rural community that was really negatively affected
Hmm.
by asbestos and sort of like dump like
Mm.
mines dumping all of their like toxins in this local community and sort of did a massive like effort to both sort of like study what diseases were being were like there and how she could sort of like help the local community like build up and change things. My dad was doing something similar in the mines, looking at sort of like how we were just like treating mine workers and like affecting like social structures and health in the mines. So I kind of grew up in a family that like questioned the system fully
Yeah.
from birth. Um, and then on top of it, like South Africa as a whole was just questioning itself.
Yeah.
And we had so many systems that didn't work. And like there was just kind of this known of like, authority doesn't actually have any of the answers. Like
Hmm.
it was kind of a like that was kind of known on one end. And on the other end, we had this like incredible leader in Nelson Mandela who was like one of the best social leaders of his time in terms of like figuring out like what is best for this nation. Like
Hmm.
is fighting and is like, creating like mass destruction the right thing? Or like is
Mm.
there a way that we can find resolve? And
Harnessing
being
that
able to
energy, right?
see both of those things of like you can have a system that is completely broken that you should question. And you can have individuals that like are seeking truth in how people relate. And kind of learning from that, I think was like something I'm so thankful that I had growing up and has
Yeah.
made me kind of question everything.
Hmm.
Since then, it's like, okay, does does this system work or like can it be changed?
Yeah.
Does like and how can it be changed to better humanity? It's not just like can we change it to be more productive? Or can we change it to make more money? Or can we change it to, you know, like create more efficiencies? It's like all focused on like, does it create a better world for humanity?
Yeah. I'm curious what you've found your experience to be as sort of part of the tech community, the futurist community, the sort of like Web3 decentralized community, because so many of us operating in that space come from very like safe Western high trust societies where like the state is actually like able to take care in a lot of ways. And we come to this with like certain assumptions, right? Versus I think your experience of sharing in the same like value set about like human rights and like those progressive ideals, but knowing that your relationship with institutions in the state can be very different. Do you find that you often arrive at like a yeah, when you come to the table and like discuss some of these things with your peers and collaborators, do you find that you're often bring lighting like new perspectives? Like, or do you feel like you guys have sort of come of age in the same cohort and so you're just operating on something shared and you just run from there?
That's a good question. I think that's something I would have to reflect on more, but like my gut instinct is like my focus is like seeking truth and seeking goodness
Yeah.
versus like trying to sort of like understand how like, authority maybe has like decided something should be and
Mm-hmm.
deciding like right or wrong. It's like, well, there's truth in everything, but it's kind of understanding like what aspects have been like truthful and have been sought out to be like truthful that is like good for humanity, and
Yeah.
what are being truthful towards like a different end goal.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that's something that like I feel very fortunate like being in different circles, and especially with Edge, like being multidisciplinary. Like a big focus for Edge City is that we bring together people from many different disciplines, ideally in the frontiers of those disciplines,
Yeah.
and people that are kind of just like coming up with like new ideas for what they're working on. And what's cool to see is like because there's just this range of different disciplines, there's maybe an aspect that's like that I come from that's like almost more forgiving uh of differences that have like like where people get to, because it's like seeing early fields like come up with ideas, and it's like something seems promising that
Yeah.
people are chasing after, but like whenever you're early in a space, it's like it's a freaking elephant and everyone's blind trying to see like what piece
Yeah.
are we touching, where are we going, and like some aspects are going to resonate and others aren't, and like some aspects that actually aren't the right way to go
Mm-hmm.
aren't necessarily good. But then it's like there's a snowball effect, and you're like, gosh, where did this go? What are we going to do about this? Now the whole world is using this in a bad way.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I think everything can be reframed. It's like you look at AI and it's like you've got doomers and you've got accelerationists, and sort of the doomers think that like this is the worst thing in the entire world, and the accelerationists are like, amazing, let's keep going. And it's like
Yeah.
both have their reasons, and both have
Yeah.
in why why they are thinking about it in that specific way. So I think there's like, in a weird way, I actually feel like I'm pretty malleable when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to kind of how I see things or ideas. Like I'm very confident in an opinion, but I'm like very open to hearing alternatives and like recognizing that we're all growing sort of a worldview as we go.
Yeah.
Um, and that like for me, the biggest thing is like having truth to building something that is like good for humanity
Yeah.
versus like truth to a different like long-term outcome.
Yeah. I think I'm sort of leaning on two kind of like principles, cliches in terms of like navigating this maturation. I think that you're speaking to. It's that like the point of a system is what it does, right? And like the road to hell is paved with good intention. And that's not to be pessimistic, but it's just to recognize that like systems do things. Like there are kind of just these emergent properties. We live in a very complex world, and you just need to keep these things in mind as you're testing out your ideas, as you're trying to figure out what is good, what is truth, right?
And I think a big piece, it's like where I think Edge is trying to solve a need is I look at a lot of big systems and like there's nothing that's questioning them
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's not just like talk
Yeah.
versus like doing. And if people want to make change, it's like this large scale effort that needs to happen or something that's so small that like no one else notices. So it's like, can we create these opportunities for like more of that, like, yeah, the jostling that I was talking about, like the kind of like questioning, like, what the heck are we doing here? And like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And like, if we can do that, like, I think there's like this incredible ability to have more malleable systems.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas right now they're so rigid because we haven't created like opportunities to question or iterate.
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of like I almost see institutional systems very similarly to like how I see real estate and like buildings that we build.
Mm.
Like, and especially let's say California.
Yeah.
There are getting a permit to change anything is near impossible in this place. So you're living in a space where like we've built buildings that are not necessarily the right buildings for this like population and the structure
Mm-hmm.
this in this place now. And it's causing a lot of problems. And it's not making the city any more beautiful by
Yeah.
not being willing to like change any of them. And there's so much rigidity in the system to actually address any of that change
Mm-hmm.
that the barrier to entry of like actually anyone who wants to make change, it's like, man, if you want to change an ugly building into something that's beautiful, let alone like more functional. It's like 3 years of permitting, then another
Yeah.
like 6 years of building. And you're like, where do you find the time, the money, the ambition,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of willing like team to run at that? Like you
Yeah.
just don't. So people atrophy and say like, well, I'm not gonna make any change in this way. And I think this
Yeah.
things happen for like institutional systems where it's like they're so rigid in a way, and the barrier to, like, propose changes is so high
Mm-hmm.
that people are just like, "I don't even know how to go about doing it," and, like, we just haven't built those systems.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that, like, if we could create more environments where it's like, "Hey, let's just, like, create, like, a test bed on the side here.
Yeah.
Let's just try things out. Let's
Yeah.
let's try something different, see what we can achieve." I think there's a lot more that, like, would be iterative in
Totally.
system and more malleable that people are excited to change, and you
Mm-hmm.
would actually see more interesting people and, like, ambitious people going after adjusting systems in a way that's, like, better for humans and the world than what we see today.
Yeah. It feels like we're in a space where there's so much opportunity and just we're blessed with so much abundance. I'm seeing more and more, I think, like a different culture emerging in tech and entrepreneurship where the competition is not oriented around like capturing market share and like playing zero sum games, but a lot of times it's like people who respect one another but just have strong opinions that diverge, and they're just like, well, you know what, the thing is, we don't have to like fight about this like academics who spend like a whole career like bickering over like the finer points of interpretation, right? They're like, no, that's not going to like actually help anyone. Let's both of us take our talents and go like build our iteration of the truth, the good, the opportunity, right? And then like the world will tell us which was the better idea. And then if you can set aside your ego and just be like, all right, whether I like win or my opponent like wins, like everyone is winning if we can learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
And to me, this is just like a really cool aspect of, yeah, it just feels like there's this culture that is definitely in a space where everyone's encouraged to collaborate and network and sort of bring together, yeah, just exist in this playground of ideas, which is really think like the power of what you're doing with Edge.
Yeah, I think it's such a that's such a good point of, like, there is this world of sort of, like, a big emergence right now of, like, you can just do things,
Mhm. Yeah.
which I think is awesome, and it's like, that meme has, like, really gone far. And like, I hope it continues because like you can just do things. Like everyone
Hmm.
can just do things. And it would be so much better if people just did things in the world
Yeah.
than sort of not. Um and I think that there's a lot of that at edge that I think like we're still trying to understand kind of what's going on. It's like the month-long environment where people are
Hmm.
living in close proximity. There's some people that like are seeing one another every single day, and there's other people that are like flowing through and bringing new ideas. So there's like never
Yeah.
like stale concepts that are building. And there's something in that structure where it's like close proximity, different industries, different ages of people, kind of a constant quest of like building and co-creating, as well as a constant quest of being healthy that has created this space of like a senius. So it's like a real ecosystem of people
Hmm.
being like, oh my goodness, I can just try something. And it's like, there's not like a, oh no, am I going to fail
Yeah.
mindset? It's just like a, well, it's just about trying things. I might as well go and do it. And I think that's been such a powerful, like, it's almost like it's just a vibe.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I'm like, how do you define a vibe? What is
Yeah.
that valuable and what capacity? There is this kind of very interesting aspect of like there is a vibe that is created that like allows people to just do more
Hmm.
and feel this like sense of freedom to build and like go after the thing that they've been most scared of, that they're most like excited to try, or
Hmm.
like build a relationship that they would never have done otherwise. So it's kind of like unlocking sort of like this stagnant space that
Hmm.
like happens for and like happens within people in more like rigid environments
Yeah.
where they're like, okay, there's specific structures of how I need to act here. I don't know if I can bring this idea to the table or that idea
Hmm.
to the table. There's more of the sense of like everything's on the table, just do things and like see where it lands.
Yeah.
And that's been really cool to tap into. And so there's like the one side of like the outcomes are very clear that people are like, I'm doing more. I'm feeling more inspired to like go after what I want to. I feel like I have the support to
Yeah.
go after bigger ideas. And I also feel like I'm being exposed to new ways of thinking that are like accelerating the progress in an idea that I have
Yeah.
and this like support network to build. So that's kind of happening on one side. And then the other is like, I generally think the environment being people kind of being surrounded by one another in a way that, again, like their nervous systems are just feeling better.
Yeah.
There's like a shared nervous system, like collective, like biofields that's getting created that, like, I would be very curious if someone on a scientific standpoint who's studying biofields and like, if there's anyone out there that is listening to this that is doing that, like, we're trying to collect more of that the ideas around biofields and what's happening when you're bringing a lot of people together in like healthier
Yeah.
ecosystem biofield environments. And if we can like achieve something there and
Hmm.
prove something, I think that like will actually be a lot more clear of like, okay, how can you duplicate this in like many other ways other than like in these kind of event like month long formats?
Yeah. Um, I used to live just down the street from Forest Temple and Vipassana Center. And so I'm quite inclined to lean into like the most woo interpretation of what you just said, just like vibrations, unlocking rigidity, structure, this all, Michael Edward Johnson is someone who's an advisor at Amagi, hoping to have him on like later on in season 2 of the podcast. And if you're thinking about how to sort of understand this like post-materialist like paradigm of how to explain like consciousness and like the universe, I really think like vibes is actually like the lens through which we can understand all of this, right? That notion that we are energetic beings, like we exist as matter because we're vibrating at a certain like frequency. When you have good vibes, like your energy is like up here, you have access to like your higher self. You have you can be attuned, to other people's energy. more easily. There's like resonance where you can like amplify one another's like frequencies rather than if you're sort of trapped, you're stuck, your energy isn't moving because of fear, self-censorship, all these things that just trap your energy and hold tension in your body. Like, I don't think it's like a coincidence at all that like exposure therapy and cold plunge, which we know is like a somatic processing. These things it just makes sense to me how all these different like Venn diagrams of just like niche interests actually come together. Um, so yeah, I guess just like reflecting on that, I really do think like when you bring together like a critical mass of people to do what you're doing, you are unlocking, you're just like freeing people's space. Nervous, they don't have to stop and think about like safety, acceptance, belonging. They giving them that. And I think that that's something that people are really missing in the modern day. For some people, like this can be like one of the first times. And especially I think if you lean tech and you're in a community where there's a lot more people on the spectrum who like don't have to mask, or they just they don't have to stop and filter them that ways. They know that they can talk to people who sort of get it if they like make a social faux pas, that that's just a little bit more forgivable, because you're kind of cohering around ideas. But I think what you said earlier about it's easier to do this outside of cities, like I wonder if that's also like relevant, because then you're dealing with less like psychic traffic from like normie society that wants to like keep you stuck in some of the same ideas. So I don't know if that speaks to you, but like you say this to me and I'm just like, yes, 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 duh.
Yeah, no, I think I kind of think that's an interesting one. I think the whole like being in a city, how I see it as like cities are very leaky in terms of like you can't create a hub that like actually drives serendipity.
Yeah.
And what's wild to me is like how, like, to your point of like, people being in environments where they're more accepted and whatnot. There's just a piece of like people being in environments where they can actually interact with multiple people in a day.
Yeah.
Like that is just it's a crazy reality that like most people are not in a space where they get to do that anymore. Like most
Hmm.
people in the US have 0 friends. Most kids in a household go to school and interact
Hmm.
with teachers and the kids at school and then come back and interact with their parents and siblings if they have. And like that's like purely the social construct of people that they're spending time around. Um so in a lot of ways, like, I consider myself a very social being in my day to day. Like there's always, I've got something every evening that I'm going to.
Hmm.
There's always different people on weekends that I'm seeing. And by like city standards, I'm incredibly social. By like edge standards, I'm incredibly introverted.
It's
Where it's
so
like
funny.
so I think that there's this weird world of like, it's not uncommon to go a full day of you interacting with people through your computer
Hmm.
and interacting with strangers, but not like saying hello, just like interacting at like the grocery store
Yeah.
so that you're just around other people, or at a restaurant and having like very minimal like complexity and type of social interactions and then being all fully known. So
Yeah.
serendipity for the most part has been like stripped from people's day to day.
Yeah.
And I think like a big piece of edge is just like, man, can we increase serendipity? Like if nothing, like people are like, oh my gosh, it's just so many different things. Like what's
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, you can focus on anything. Like let's just focus on the health side. Just do that. Or
Yeah.
focus on like literally all it's about is increasing serendipity. What
Yeah.
would it look like if your life had a little bit more serendipity in it?
Yeah.
And it's crazy how much like positivity comes out of that. Like again, all of the things that I was saying people are feeling coming out of Edge and all of the things that they're like, able to get done while there. Like it's crazy to me that we haven't like experimented with more models to figure
Yeah.
out like what is making humans and the human experience the best version of the human experience.
Yeah.
Like we've boxed ourselves in so much to the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 that a lot of like how we've experimented with human experiences are on weekends. But it's like work is so a part of the human experience
Yeah.
that like there's it kind of goes back to the first question you had of like, how do I do all of the different things? And I'm like, because it's all integrated.
Yeah.
And such a big piece is like, we haven't done much more experimentation than like a Saturday and Sunday of like, okay, maybe a weekend trip away and like how do people connect? Or a conference where people are like sharing intellectual ideas. But it's so stunted
Hmm.
because you've got this like gray time period that we've like blocked out in the week that makes it very hard to do anything but work during those times
Yeah.
versus try and figure out like a more integrated flow. So that's kind of one ramble on that note. And I think the other piece is like you brought up Mike Johnson. He's a dear friend. At this point, I spend so much time with him in a week. And I've really just like grown fond of a lot of the concepts that's happening
Yeah.
kind of like from his research where it's like consciousness should be understood from a scientific standpoint. And like we just need to find the periodic table for consciousness. Like we've created so few opportunities to really dive into like what is our consciousness
Yeah.
and like what is going on. And there's also so little funding going towards consciousness. Like we've started supporting a lot of different research projects in the
Cool.
consciousness world. So we've been able to pull together some funds from donors, as well as kind of some like anything that we've been able to ground from Edge to support bringing people in that are doing like science of consciousness work through
Yeah.
Edge. And it's been really interesting seeing some of the stuff come to life where it's like, I truly believe that there is a whole like bucket of science to be discovered here
Mhm.
around consciousness that's going to like unlock so much more that like soft sciences right
Yeah.
now. Like community is a soft,
Right.
the- like there's no science around that. And it's like,
Yeah.
it really is like there actually is. We just need like time to start defining the bounds.
Hmm.
Consciousness, it's like, "Oh, that's such a soft woo-woo thing," like, there's no ways that we could have science around that, like, it's like, no,
Yeah.
but there's very clear science that's coming out around it, and I think that's gonna be the case for so many different fields that, like, right now are, like, the soft sciences that we just, like, have kind of bucketed as, like, "That's a social science,"
Yeah.
um, and, like, really kind of
Yeah.
change the way that we're doing things.
I think we've been definitely very limited too in terms of the science that we can do, because we haven't really been equipped to understand like complex systems, right? Like we can do chemistry like with a lot of fine grained control, but when it comes to biology, a lot of it's like still guesswork. When it comes to like medicine and health, where like allopathic medicine doesn't actually understand or require knowledge of how the human body like is supposed to be healthy, right? But suddenly with AI or just with like new paradigms, just taking a very like radical shift, like, yeah, like Mike Johnson is doing, then suddenly we can even explore these spaces.
Totally. So
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting. I think like Edge is actually oddly like a lab for that.
Yes.
Like it's a weird it was something we kind of stumbled into.
Mm.
Where it was like, the idea was to build a space where you can build, test out new ideas around governance, around like building tech that's going to support like future ideas. And
Hmm.
that's definitely still been the case.
Yeah.
Like it's still the best space to do that. And especially when you're building something new in the world, like I think people just to test it out
Hmm.
uh, before you just like, throw it out there and spend like 8 months on it. And then like you've really
Yeah.
created the thing really helps. But I think the other like fun aspect that has come out of Edge is being this like lab for social sciences that didn't like wasn't an intended piece, but like with the multidisciplinary aspect has very much so been like a reality that has come out of it.
Cool.
So in Patagonia, there's going to be like a whole consciousness track for the whole month. that will have like healers as well as people that are like practicing in a specific way and
Hmm.
folks that are like actually doing science on and like mapping a lot of the reactions that people are having on the ground to understand
Mm.
like, are we actually figuring out this vaso computation thing that Mike sort of has really explored, where it's like this idea, and this guy Nick Ford is like really pushing this forward with like, can we actually test like vascular constriction and figure
Yeah.
out like, is there tension in the body in specific
Hmm.
ways? So it's like that is coming out. There's another group that's going to be more of a creative residency that's got a agentic AI that
Uh-huh.
is going to be sort of a benevolent dictator of like how people should be spending time. And they're all like,
Interesting.
we're willing to follow this for the whole
Hmm.
month. Like they're signing up to follow that, which I think is just like a fascinating experiment. Like, cause
Yeah.
that in one way, like is going to happen in the world at like mass scale. So like
Yeah.
test it with 30 people. Like that's great. So it's like very cool seeing that come to be. And it's like those are, and then there's, more on the traditional like science and like startup and sort of like tech side, like type residencies. But it is cool to see this emergent of sort of the soft sciences and the social sciences
Yeah.
becoming more real and having like a real lab to actually experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. Applying some structure, like creating opportunities for scale. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to have you kind of like map out like Edge City as far as like the people flows, the resource flows, the capital flows. But maybe we can start with like the backstory first. Like, how did this idea come about? Was it like a pitch deck? Was it like you and like Timour just riffing one day, like in the sauna? Was it a spiritual download from the universe, fully like fleshed out? How did this get started and come off the ground?
Yeah, man, backstory is so fun. So essentially, what ended up happening was I was doing quite a bit of work in community building in Austin, Texas, and I was like really trying to focus on getting everyone to live close together.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to get like 50 friends to all live within a 5 minute walk of one another, and then sort of like start to build like amenities between the community. And while I was doing that, I was also working at a project called Gitcoin that's in
Mm-hmm.
the space that's focused on funding public goods, using different types of funding mechanisms. And at the time, it was all around quadratic funding. And sort of like a belief I had was like, we need to find new like social technologies, aka technologies that like are really good and interesting at multiplayer games, because the everything that we have in the previous generation of like tech and sort of how we're operating in the world is all geared towards us playing like individual games
Yeah.
and
And
sort of having
dopamine
tech
hacking.
that's like, how am I doing better in the world as an individual? And then it's like, well, shit, I'm not socializing with anyone and like I'm unhappy. What's happening?
Yeah.
Um, so I was really curious about Ethereum. I was super drawn to sort of the like regen community in that space because I was like, there's something in this technology that's much more like social in nature
Mm-hmm.
that's pulling everyone together and like how are people reacting? I think DAOs had a great concept to start with, but like it was so tech focused and not built like a lot of it wasn't built from like just what is like again the social science
Yeah.
behind things that we need to understand in order for this type of like these mechanisms to work and people not to just like kind of hate one another and try and like be strangers on the internet like
Yeah.
being rude to one another, which I think is kind of like the zero sum game ended up coming out in DAOs versus sort of like
Mm.
the like infinite games that people wanted to
Yeah.
like a lot of the leaders in the space like wanted to see. So those were sort of like two avenues I was going down. And I got to know a really good friend, Vincent Weiser, who has built just like a lot of amazing projects in the DAC and decentralized science world. So he built like VitaDAO, he started Bio.xyz, he started Prime Intellect. Like, he's really just a incredible connector of people and, like, user of, like, new technology. And he knew that I cared deeply about communities and that I'd built these, like, adult summer camps for my community where it's like I had, like, 150 people, weekend, like, activities, which is always such a blast. And he was like, "Look, I'm working with Vitalik on this new idea. Like, it would be great to have you involved. I don't know, we don't fully know what it's gonna look like, but, like, we just know it's gonna be, like, 2 months in Montenegro, and, like, we've got a
Mhm.
couple." And he pulled me in sort of, like, 8 weeks before that was starting, and there was a couple of other people that were sort of, like, working on this idea. Someone in the sort of Montenegro government was super pro us doing something in Montenegro because he wanted to adopt stable coins and sort of, like, really figure out how Montenegro could play more of a role in the future of technology.
Yeah.
I, like, really wanted to experiment with, like, how do you actually like, what is the MVP of network states?
Yeah.
And what is, like, the MVP of crypto cities? And he's got blog posts back from, like, 2016 working on this project. Vincent really has just, like, incredible connections across different types of industries, and I think something that was, like, a idea was, like, let's have people not just from crypto in this, let's have
Mhm.
people from also, like, the longevity space and whatnot. So that's how kind of he was involved. And then Nicole, who was someone else involved in the project, was like very interested in like, how do you build a better hacker house? Like, what is the next generation
Yeah.
of hacker houses that's cheaper than living in the Bay? So everyone came in at it from a completely different angle. Just like there was the government angle, there was sort of the like network state, crypto city angle, there was the like create spaces for young talent to be that's like not in San Francisco.
Mm.
There was the, like, let's bring, people from longevity and other spaces together to, like, actually live
Yeah.
healthier. And then, like, I came in a lot more from, like, the let's build an experience that, like, people would, like, want to live in all the time
Yeah.
and be the biggest, like, seniors hub that we can create.
Mhm.
And, um, I then pulled in a few different folks to help run this. It was when I got pulled in, it was 6 weeks before my wedding, which I hadn't really planned, and it was gonna be a 7-day wedding in South Africa. And I was like, life throws you like, I think anyone who's listening here, when you are sort of, like, overwhelmed by the amount of things that are coming at you that are all, like, in line with the things you wanna
Mhm.
do them. Like,
Yeah.
you don't get to choose when the right opportunity is gonna come your way,
Yeah.
and you don't get to choose when something that's, like, part of your life's mission is, like, right in front of you, and if it is there and you say, "No, it's fine, like, I'll find another time to do that,"
Yeah.
like, you probably won't. Like, life is so short, and there's, like, weird serendipitous moments that, like, listening to your intuition wherever
Yeah.
you can is so, so valuable, and it's so underrated as, like, a powerful source of, like, being
Yeah.
able to do cool things. So, anyway, I sort of, like, was like, "I'm just gonna do it all. We're gonna make this happen." Um, so I helped with sort of leading that effort. It ended up, like, there wasn't that much done, before then, and then I was like, "Okay, how do we pull in different people? How do we make this, like, much more of a decentralized effort? How do we, like, make it a seniors hub? How do we make sure people are building stuff on the ground and testing on different projects? How do we create a community environment so that people stay in this place?" And most importantly, I was like, "How do we make it fun so that people don't leave?" Because
Yeah.
like, Montenegro, as much as it was a beautiful place on the coastline, like, there was nothing else going on there, and
Right.
it's like, if it wasn't fun, everyone would even if they aren't like, I'm, like, putting my hands up leaving, they would just, like, fly to different things on weekends, like,
Mhm.
you can always come up with an excuse about why you don't wanna be somewhere.
Right. So there's like a sort of formula you're trying to come up with in some way of like the secret sauce of Silicon Valley is the serendipity, but you're also trying to find the formula for stickiness, right?
Totally. And, like, stickiness and, like, a place where people are like, "I have to be here, and if I leave, I'm gonna miss something."
Yeah.
So, that was kind of the first iteration, and it was both sort of a beautiful project and something that, like, taught everyone from it so many different things. And also, like, it was cool because like, there were so many different missions that were all coming together. And sort of from that, we wanted to create something that was like a point that almost like was a node that many other groups could then go and do things with. So we did something called Zoo Connect that was like ideally this like starting node to like go and do other cool things that were like adjacent to what Zuzalu was. And then after that, like I worked with Vitalik to make sure that we had a pool of funding to like fund a lot of different projects just to get off the ground.
Yeah.
So that was like the impetus of like where we went. And from that there was kind of this like open question of like, do do we want to keep doing Zuzalu, or like do we actually want to kind of build like something else? Do we want to see like, will Zuzalu still be a thing that's valuable in the world if like it never happened again? Will it be
Mm.
valuable if it doesn't have like a strong team behind it? And kind of like that was the experiment to test. It's like, can you actually just put an idea out in the world that like starts a movement that doesn't necessarily need anyone involved in like moving that forward,
Right.
and that just like existing. And from that, like I'd worked with Timour. He helped do one of the sort of weeks at uh, at Zuzalu, and it was like an amazing week. And he was just really great to collaborate with. And then pulled him in to work on Zoo Connect together. And from that, we were like, we've got an idea of like what we'd love to see. Like we wanted it to be much more multidisciplinary. There was like still this focus on governance, but like less of a focus of like, we have to build a network state in one place, and more this focus on like, we want to build spaces that create like micro eggs,
Mhm.
people to like really think and incubate new ideas that they wouldn't have
Mhm.
created otherwise. And we want to like see new urbanism happen in the world.
Yeah.
Like we want to see like towns that are only walking and that have flying cars to get to different places versus, are focused on cars. So we want places that are focused on like multi-generational by default versus places that like separate all the different ages. So that was sort of like our alignment. And in that we were like, it's not as crypto focused to start. It's like crypto on the back end
Yeah.
and many more things on the front end. Um, and there was also an aspect where like we wanted to do some stuff in the US. And like Zuzalu was pretty anti-US um, uh, by nature to start. So we were like, okay, let's keep Zuzalu as this thing that happened and that was like beautiful and that like funds new initiatives moving forward. And one of those new initiatives being Edge City.
Mm.
So that's kind of where it was born. And I think we took a look at like we did the 2 month long thing, and then we did the 2 week long Zoo Connect piece. And the 2 month long thing felt a little bit long. It was amazing, but it definitely was something that like left relationships like fractured at the end of it,
Oh.
because like someone came and left sort of a life behind. A lot of people that like felt hard, like it was harder to integrate into sort of like their life after.
Mhm.
And then the type of person that could commit to 2 months was very
Right.
different. So essentially, we were like, let's shorten it a little bit, but still have it long enough where it feels like real life. And if it takes 30 days to form a habit, let's like do it at a month and see
Yeah.
how that goes. We were very pro the idea of like having other people come in. So it's like other people coming in for a week is amazing because it just creates dynamism. And
Yeah.
communities need dynamism, otherwise they become cults. And I think and
Yeah.
I think it's like it's like everyone kind of like laughs when I say that, and I'm like, it's such a critical piece because it is so easy to turn a sort of like thriving ecosystem into a cult, and then it
Yeah.
becomes like this, that's the end of it all. So I think like a positive cult is a thriving ecosystem,
Mhm.
and that takes dynamism and bringing in people, having people be able to like come and go as they want is an important piece of that. Like you don't have a country that forces people, or a city
Yeah.
that forces people to be there a specific amount of time. The people that come longer have a way better time, but it's like that's neither here nor there. Um, and then like we're like, what are things that we've seen emerge from Zuzalu that we loved? and what are things that like we want to leave space for to emerge. So the one aspect was like multidisciplinary. That was like really key. And we're like, if you read anything, it's that new innovations happen at the cross section of different disciplines.
Yeah.
The other aspect was health. Like that was a core piece for us where we're like, you could very quickly, if you don't have that as a focus, create a community that's just like not doing anything interesting and also just like goes like straight to like partying for a month. And then
Right.
that becomes like this like indulgence in sort of like aspects of life that like are great to have every once in a while. But like if that's the default, like it's like
Mm.
indulging in hedonism is not what we all want. Like it's
Yeah.
not the it's never ended well for people.
Yeah.
That is another sort of
Yeah.
culture
You're
thing that happens.
prototyping society,
Yeah.
right? You're not prototyping like an escape.
Exactly, exactly. And, like, escapes are amazing from a week, like,
Yeah.
Burning Man is coming up next week. I love the burn. It's amazing. That's not prototyping society, that's just creating a space that's, like, beautiful and magical and, like, gives you
Mhm.
inspiration that, like, you can find beauty in the world. But it's got a very different sort of, like, end goal. And then the other aspect was, like, there was 2 families at Zuzalu that came
Mhm.
the whole time. And thankfully, they were there at the same time. And when they were there, it was just like so clear that there was like this potential for having more kids involved in a way that like instead of just creating a campus, like a university and using sort of similar age groups, the kids just brought a completely different like dynamic
Mm.
for learning and growing from for everyone else. And then the kids themselves got exposed to so many more adults over
Yeah.
the course of the time that they were there. So it was like I was like, "Okay, this is an area I think we should double down on," and then also bring in sort of like older groups, that like also it's like, why have we shipped old people off to live in,
Yeah.
by themselves? It's like, where did we create that in the Western world?
Yeah. When
Um,
did we stop valuing our elders?
yeah, like what happened? So we were like, let's experiment with that aspect of it. And then the last piece where it's like, I think it's very easy to create, like to your point, an escapist community where you're just thinking of better ideas and you're like, we will do it so much better than everyone else. And like
Mhm.
you can just think that way. You don't need to do anything. You can just think that way forever and like never actually like make progress. So building and co-creation was such a big
Yeah.
piece. We're like, okay, this is a principle we want to bring in where it's like there's demo days every week. People are doing sort of like show and tells to one another of their projects. There's
Mhm.
like, actually build something that we can use as a community, and celebrate as a community. And that has been incredibly valuable for like it being a place of doing
Yeah.
versus a place of sort of just like idea sharing. And, like,
Mhm.
there is the place for, like, ideas to be shared, but then there's also this, like, real focus on building that I think has been beautiful to see emerge. And ultimately, that was kind of like, we're like, "Those are the core principles we're gonna start with,
Yeah.
and let's go do something." And with that, I knew we needed to, we didn't have the same starting point as we did with Zuzalu, where it was like, "This is Vitalik's thing. I wanna go and spend, 2 months with Vitalik." It was like, "This is a weird thing in the world. Who the heck is going?"
Mhm.
And, like, that's pretty scary. Like, it was this crazy thing of we were like, "Okay, we're fully bootstrapped." We built something that was amazing. We've both built communities in different ways previously. Like, with how are we gonna bring people together? And and kind of something that we kind of anchored on was we were like, "Okay, let's at least figure out where people are that we would want to attract." And something that I was seeing in sort of the Zuzalu community was everyone was like, "We wanna create a place that is like the Bay, but outside the Bay." And, we wanna attract those people, and it's like I was like, It's gonna be really hard if we go and build something in Zanzibar to
Right.
be like, 'Hey, all of you guys come here.'" Like, that's just not gonna work. It's gonna be near impossible. So instead, we're like, is there one a land project that we can partner with that we actually like really believe in the ideals and kind of like the future that they want to build and like be a positive sum add
Mhm.
to what they want to build in the world.
So
And
you're enhancing the energy that's already in place. You're building a top existing supportive infrastructure. You are like magnifying the effects of the hotspot in terms of types of people and talent it attracts
yeah,
support.
and a good friend, sort of Devin Zugal, had been putting out this idea of this sort of new community she wanted to create called Esmeralda.
Mm,
And that's sort of just like it's going to be 2 hours north of the bay, just outside this town called Cloverdale. And I was like, she wants to build a place that like brings amazing people together, and we want to build a place that like is essentially the the pop up of what she wants. Like,
yeah.
let's see if we can like partner on this. So that's how we started with like Edge Esmeralda as our first major project, and that was sort of last year, and ended up being way more successful than we expected. Like, we wanted to have 200 people there, um, and have a lot of interesting people, but it was kind of like some kids maybe like we're like children are welcome.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll show up, and we ended up having 1,000 people come through. We had 40 kids. The the workload was insane. Like, bless the two folks that sort of like ended up helping with production. But they were like, I've never seen something so disorganized. And I was like, I don't know how to do production. and and ultimately it was like we just kind of figured it out. Like, it was like
Yeah.
that was the beginning, but everyone figured it out. And
Hmm.
it was just this like it was just a much bigger success than we expected it to be. And it was also just so much work to make it that. But it
Yeah.
really like was a launch pad for like, this is something special, and people love what this is going
Mm,
to, like, what this is creating in the
yeah.
world, the relationships they're making, the companies they're building out of this, the just like personal growth that they're getting as a result of it. And we knew that we had to get ahead of sort of committing to a second one somewhere else. So that's
Right.
kind of where we're like, we've already got the Ethereum community and like connected there, and like we really want to support seeing crypto exist in the world,
Yeah.
in a positive way and not in a scammy way. Like, that is actually a
Yeah. Yeah.
huge goal of ours. And the Ethereum Foundation's amazing, and they'd like supported us with an initial grant. So we were like, let's do something in Thailand because DevCon's
Mm,
there. Um, and that's kind of how we did the second one in Thailand. And it was a big piece of like, we wanted to be international. Like, we didn't want to
yeah.
only be in one place, because if we're building like a network society, it actually has to exist in many places. Like,
Yeah.
for it to be resilient, it needs to be in multiple places. And
And
that was
it's that dynamism that you're speaking to, right? You don't want just one culture, one state model to become dominant.
totally. And it's like, that was such a big piece, was like, can we like appreciate and learn from many different cultures?
Hmm.
And can we also like give to many different cultures and show sort of like what's feasible in different places in the world? And like, it's not easy doing that. And it's like,
Yeah.
we've got a very global team. And of course there's like differences in opinion and how things should be built and how things should be done. Or I think there's something like beautiful in the piece of like, okay, well, how do you get along with that? And how do you still create something that is beautiful? And like,
Mm,
how do you all hold the same truth in mind,
yeah.
even if you've got different ideals of how to get there?
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the decentralized approach, right? And the importance of having that culture is you don't have any ego, you don't have any one cult personality like leading it. The point of the thing is to celebrate ideas and experiments and empower different nodes and just see where that energy like feeds itself, right? I think this is where your experience building an ecosystem I can really see it coming, yeah, in the like the whole ethos and approach.
And I think it's like, it's just a constant like iteration of like what is right, what is good. And it's like, we do want to see full-time places exist in the world
Yeah.
that we sort of support and are a part of, and are able to like provide value to, whether
Mhm.
that is like marketing value, whether that is like bringing people to the community, whether that is like helping kind of like, if it's like, oh, well, that's an edge community. I know that it's going to be healthy. I know that it's going to be multi-generational. I know that it's
Yeah.
going to be more frontier focused. Um, or if it's like, helping like pull together funding for different initiatives, like all of those are on the table of like what we want to partner with and sort of
Yeah.
like kind of provide value to. And, at some point it might mean that like we own land and then find amazing developer partners in different parts of the world that we think have like a ton of potential, or we find more Devons. Devon's very special, but
Yeah.
like we find more Esmeraldas in the world. And like we've been like working on kind of finding that all over. And at the same time, it's like to your point of like learning from different cultures and recognizing like this is an ecosystem that's gonna grow and support one another. And it's like we're just at the beginning. And I think if anything, it's like we're in a space where it's like if we can just like obsess over understanding like what is the best human experience.
Yeah.
Like AI is going to be incredible in the world. It's going to change all of our
Mhm.
lives. It already has. It's kind of like what the light bulb did.
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, it's like, what can AI never do? It can never have a human experience.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like we can never have an elephant experience, right? Like as
Yeah.
much as we understand them, as much as we like learn
It's an
about them, like
embodied experience. It's a
it's
social
just a thing.
experience.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna have a trunk. I'm never gonna know what it's like. I can learn everything about it,
Yeah.
and I can be, quote unquote, better than it, like in terms of different things that I can do with my brain. But it's like that doesn't necessarily mean that like I can ever have that experience.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true for humanity. And it's this beautiful thing of like I don't necessarily think we've fully learned how to like human in the best way possible yet. I think
Yeah.
there's like there's still so much to unfold and learn about and figure out. And like
Yeah.
it's both on the physical side and the emotional side and on the intellectual side and like the systems that we have to support that.
Yeah.
So if anything, it's like if we can just obsess over supporting projects that are like really pushing that forward, and that's everything from real estate to the consciousness stuff to sort of like crazy neurotech projects to AI projects. Like
Yeah.
there's so much out there that we want to support in being created that supports like getting to the truth of like the best human experience.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to kind of see that unfold. And a big piece of it is like, not having a dictatorship to your point.
Yeah.
And having an ecosystem that like is building that because it's going to take many minds to pull that together and
Mhm.
many people to pull that together. And I think there's like this whole set of work to be done of like what a collective can achieve more so than sort of just like a collective that is spiky versus just like one spiky leader, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's so many things I want to ask you and talk about, but just trying to keep things like reasonable in scope since we can't talk forever. But hopefully we can keep coming back to this conversation. So Edge City is named such, right? Because you're trying to sort of explore the bleeding edge. You're trying to figure out what gives people an edge, right? I really like that. Like, I'm curious if we sort of personalize it to you a little bit. Like, what can you reflect from your life that has like given you an edge that perhaps you're trying to bake into like what the like baking in those edges to Edge City. But maybe let's refine it even more. I'm curious connecting to, as an expectant mother who's now like you're getting the chance to live multi-generationally, right? Not just designing by ethos, but like you get to become the elephant, right? Like now you're gonna like really be living in the experience of creating the future in a new and biological way. Like what's the Janine edge? What's your edge stack? And what do you want to carry forward?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I mean, I do love the name Edge City, and I think it's like one of those things of like the if actually my neighbor came like had that word where he was like, yeah, you always want to live in Edge City. You want to live in a place.
Mm,
You want to live in a place where everyone around you is like operating as if they're in the future,
yeah.
where it's sort of like they've normalized the edge because it's a lot easier to build the future when you're actually living in it.
Hmm.
And I just think that that's such a great way to see it. It's like, how can you consistently be in a spot where you're around people that are like pushing the future forward
Yeah.
in a better way? And you're just like, oh, well, that's just lies now. And essentially, I think for me, like, where am I pushing the edge and where am I kind of doing things? I think something that I love bringing to the table with Edge, as like a project and kind of want to always create in the space is just like an energy of like everything is possible. Um, and the sense of like, how can you live a life without fear? Like, I think there's so much fear that holds so many of us back from doing the things that we want to do in the world. And the more that I have like pushed myself to sort of like let go of fear, and I've done
Yeah.
it a lot of different ways, like physical exercise has been incredibly valuable. Like sports growing up, it's like, how do you push your boundaries that much further?
Yeah.
Know that like your body is still like capable of doing so much more. Even when your mind's like, I'm tired, I can't do this.
Yeah.
You totally can.
Mhm.
Um, or like just in general, like doing a crazy long bike ride or crazy long trail run where you're like, is this ever gonna end? I'm at mile 70, like, am I gonna ever like, are my legs ever gonna
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, there's just this like undying like trust that like you learn how to have in or like I've learned how to have in myself.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the same is for like putting projects out in the world that are like really hard. Like this whole like Edge is not an easy structure at all. And the fact that, we're bootstrapped and figuring it out, it's like none of it fully makes sense. But it's like, that's a thing that I wanna see happen, and it's like, if it fails, it fails, but, like, I think it's got so much momentum now because we ran at it
You
without
were
fear.
brave. Yeah.
And I think the same is true for, like, different relationships I have in my life. The same is true for sort of different sort of intellectual quests where it's like, like, why am I scared of trying to learn more about this? Or, like, why do I not think I'm good enough to or, like, smart enough to go after this challenge? My age is, like, really just, like, always pushing fear aside. Um,
Mm.
I think is something that, like, has really served me in
Yeah.
being an age that has helped sort of allow me to do so much more. And then the piece around sort of like, being like an expectant mom, if it were 3 years ago, I would have been like, "Oh, no, I haven't built the thing that I wanted for my kid yet." And a lot of sort of what pushed me with building Edge was the kid stuff. Is like,
Yeah.
I looked at how certain friends were with their families, and I was like, "That sucks."
Yeah.
Like, this that's not the, like, world I wanna build for my
Yeah.
kids. Like, I don't want to have an insular family where, my kid's just going to school and then coming home, and that's their kind of, like, whole life. It's like,
Yeah.
I want my kids to be exposed to the world. I want them to have, like, many different mentors to
Mhm.
go to for, like, very different things.
Mothering experience too, right? Like, how did it happen that like mothering and parenting, the very like collective shared experience has become something that the modern default is like isolating, like that's unhealthy, right?
Totally.
It should be a privilege to mother in community.
Totally. So, like, for me, that was just such a big piece that I really wanted to make sure that I created a space that was more in community for my family.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just been really cool kind of seeing that come together. And like lastly, like I really couldn't do this without like a crazy cool partner. Like
Yeah.
I have a husband that has a wild brain and way of seeing the world and like kind of thinks that everything is easy and like makes it
Nice.
seem like everything is easy. He runs like 3 companies and is a
Mhm.
VC at the same time and nerds like down crazy rabbit holes that I'm like, where did you find the time to read about
Yeah.
any of that? Um, and like is just brings so much like levity to life. And I think I've learned a lot about that of like life is like it can be easy and you just have to sort of like be willing to live that way. Like it doesn't have to be hard to be good. Um, so I kind of think that that outset and like just like his ambition mixed with my ambition, like makes double ambition that sort of
Yeah.
takes on the walls
Yeah.
in a crazy way with a lot of laughs and a lot of smiles and just this like shared belief of like we want to build something beautiful in the world
Mhm.
that we can leave behind. And like Edge is, a big piece of that.
Yeah. I saw a tweet the other day that said the best founding pairs are where one partner is delusional and the other partner is technical. And I think in many ways, actually, the entrepreneur startup co-founder model is honestly kind of like modeled after marriages. I think it forks off of like cultural trope, right? So I do think that there is something in marriages too. Like, it's I think we underappreciate like the polarity and tension, right? We seek in our partner that which we maybe like, yeah, just someone different. And it's the same way when you're trying to like find a co-founder, like partner for your project, right? You need someone who has that thing that you need to go do more. And sometimes that's like, you know, from hearing from you, sometimes that's like energetic. It's not always just like practical resources. And I think that's a very cool thing to reflect on.
And I think sort of lastly, it's like, I think, if I were to tie up a lot, it's like Edge is a very, like, we're trying to be, emergent. We want to
Hmm.
be something where like many different people are participating, but we have a super strong core team. And like, we didn't want to sort of like give up on that. And it's like, Timour as a co-founder is like the best person I could ever work with.
Hmm.
I love working with him. He's this creative genius. He knows how to make any space feel good. He like nerds down rabbit holes that are just like so different to the ones that I go down. So it's
Yeah.
like it's the type of people that we bring in. Um, and he's just like committed to excellence in this incredible
Mm,
way. And that's not just Timour. It's like that
yeah.
ripples down our team. And like our team is tiny. It's like a team of 5. And everyone, Telemann, Sophie, Sil, like all leave their mark in this beautiful way that makes Edge like more alive and like inspires everyone else at Edge to
Yeah.
give back in different ways too.
Yeah. So, maybe as a closing moment of just thinking about what vibes we're putting into the universe on this podcast, I think you are bringing so much personally with like your energy and through the larger platform of Edge, but surely you sort of notice like what's missing. So like what would you kind of like ask the universe for? And I leave that as like a very open-ended question. Like what do you hope to see more of that maybe like you're not just like right in the middle of right now?
Yeah.
You'd love to invite it.
I think that's a great question. I do think that it kind of goes to pretty simple. It's like more amazing people hearing about and coming to Edge and like taking the risk of like, yeah, I'm gonna go for a month because like this could change my life. Um, so like we've got Edge City Patagonia coming up in mid-October to mid-November, and like seeing more people there and new faces from new places where it's like it will be a risk for
Yeah.
someone, but it'll be an amazing one. And there's like an incredible community on the other side. And I think the other piece is like people within the community, like taking more agency and being like,
Yeah.
I'm going to bring other people. And like, I want to have this vibe and this like science project or this like startup getting started. And I'm going to like put it out there while I'm there. Like, I want to just see more of that energy. Like that's just so awesome when that comes to fruition.
So let Janine and the team take you by the hand, lead you to the edge, and just feel brave enough to just take that leap and trust that you'll build the airplane on the way down or something magical is going to happen along the way.
And they'll always be a parachute.
There we go. Well, thank you so much. This has been like a super fun conversation, and just really, yeah, just great to hear more about like your personal story and the whole ethos behind Edge.
Appreciate it. This was so great. Thanks, Lily, and have a great day over there.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
hope it wasn't too early.
Yeah, and again, hopefully the first of many conversations, because with the Amagi podcast, we're definitely trying to take your lead to not just build in public, but kind of like learn in public and accept that we don't need to be the masters of this. There's so much room to be students. Yeah, thank you so much, Janine.
Thank you. Have a
Take
good one.
care. Thanks for listening. I'm your host, Lily Szabo, and this has been the Amagi Village podcast. Amagi is the ancient Sumerian word for return to mother. It's also the earliest denotation of emancipation and freedom. Not freedom through escape, but through return, through restoration, integration, through rebirth. The world is quickly changing, and the myth of modernity is coming undone. Progress is not linear, and to thrive in the coming age, we can't keep living in the matrix and just hoping for the best. It's time to embark on bold experiments. We don't claim to know what the answer is, but we know it won't come from ideology. This isn't a cult, it's not a brand. Amagi is an invitation for those who don't just play with new ideas, but are ready to live them, to walk the talk, to build the future. The Amagi Village podcast documents our journey of discovery. We're learning in public from technologists and tribal elders, from philosophers and farmers. Let's reimagine the future together. Please visit amagi.life to learn more. That's amagi.life.